Nerf melee combat. Hi everybody, Ray from 2A Left Productions, and today let's talk about Nerf melee combat. And here's just an intro into it. This is not going to be that in-depth, but it is going to give you a couple of basics that I've seen a lot of novices do, and let's try and correct some of that. So anyway, let's start with one-handed melee weapons. One-handed melee weapons are probably what most people would consider the easiest one to learn, and technically speaking they are not. Two-handed ones actually are easier to use, and I will explain that when I get to them, but let's get to this particular one minus the hidden jolt. The not so hidden jolt. Anyway, melee combat. First off, I've seen so many, let's just call them amateurs, novices, do the infamous, I want to strike once and then watch, just see what happened. Did I actually hit the guy? Did he react to it? Did I miss? Did he block it? You know, they do that all the time. They'll swing once and then just wait. This is a very bad thing to do, as especially if your opponent is somebody who has actually dueled before. They're gonna parry and then immediately counterattack, and you're standing there going, "What happened?" Well, you stood there like an idiot. That's what the that's what the problem is. So, what I like to do is to start from the guard position, and I know there's probably a real particular name for this thing, but I'm just going to call this the forward guard position, and that's where you keep the melee weapon in front of you to give you that passive defensive capability. So without too much effort, you're actually protecting, you know, part of your body from incoming strikes just by the virtue of there's a thing between you and your opponent, and that thing just happens to be your melee weapon. So there you go. But one thing that I'd like to do is when you're getting ready to duel is to have the point always facing toward your opponent's face. The main reason I do this is people's depth perception, especially at really weird ranges, and by really weird it's kind of hard to describe because everybody's a little bit different, but having a person hold a object in front of them that is longer than, say, their arm, your body doesn't quite pick up on how far the end of that is to you. That's why cars, when you have stuff hanging out the back, you're supposed to have that little red flag, because it helps you visualize how far that is from you. So if you have this pointed at someone's face, they lose the depth perception on how far away that really is. So sometimes you can go and have this pointing at them and strike, and they don't see it coming. Now I did something that was really bad, which was I did a strike and I stayed, which it should be strike and then back. Get back to this guard position as quick as possible and stay there as long as possible. Anytime you make any sort of attack, keep the weapon moving and back to that guard position. So strike and then back. Strike, then back. Unless you're trying to do a multi-hit combo and they're Therefore, you know, you do strike, strike, strike. But as soon as you get your combo done, back to that guard position. That way you can defend yourself from any ripostes, aka counterattacks. And basically you're going to be slightly better protected than if you were just keeping your weapon out there for all the world to see and immediately get killed. Okay, one-handed melee weapon and a shield. Now, there's something that I see a lot of people do. I refer to this as shield ping-pong. That's where somebody attacks and you bat it away with your shield, leaving yourself completely and utterly open, and then you wonder why you're dead. Keep the shield in front of you at all times. You don't need to bring the shield to the attack. The attack is coming. Receive the attack and counter with your own. You don't need to swat anything away. That's dumb. All you're doing is making yourself more tired and you're leaving yourself more vulnerable. Keep this in front of you as much as possible. And don't duck behind the shield, blocking your view. This is incredibly bad. It's also something that I try to exploit all the time. Attack high, so your opponent blocks their field of view, immediately followed by a just a flick of the wrist here to attack low, and now look, I hit you in the leg and you're out. And you never saw it coming because you were blocking your face with your shield. Don't do that. If you have to raise your shield, do it as fast as possible and get it back to that ready position. Same thing I was saying with the sword. Keeping this in the ready position, this is the ready position for the shield. It needs to be here for it to work. Now, when you're attacking, when you've got a shield, try not to do the whole body twist, because all that does is end up you're opening up your entire chest and all your defense goes behind you, where unless you're fighting multiple opponents, doesn't help. Because more often than not, you're fighting a single opponent in a duel. So keep this in front of you. And what you should be doing is making your attacks with the shield still in the defensive position, because that's what it's there for. Now, moving the shield slightly out of the way that you can make your attack, that's fine, because you're only opening yourself up for like a millisecond or so. But again, get that back to the ready position. Now, the sword, or your melee weapon, if you have a shield, does not need to stay in this position. Though I still kind of like doing it with the point facing toward the opponent's face. Again, for the same reasons that I stated before. But it's not as necessary when you have the shield. Your sword arm kind of low, and make attacks like this, or your chopping motions if that's more your particular style. But honestly, big chopping motions are slow compared to just little jabs. Because in a Nerf fight, a little jab wins. All you need to do is make contact and you won. There's no reason to put that much power into a strike. Now, if you have a shield and a much longer melee weapon, like this two-handed greatsword, that I'm going to be using one-handed because, well, it's Nerf and it's light and I can do that. This makes a wonderful melee weapon from a shielded position, because this So if we measure from the quillon, which is the cross guard, there's about, oh, I don't know, almost a foot, not quite, maybe 8-10 inches of extra reach on that thing. And then if I was not holding it up here by the quillon, but I was holding it down here closer to the pommel, well, it's just that much extra reach hitting your opponent. Okay, two-handed weapons techniques. Quick overview. Again, keep in that ready position, keeping that tip at your opponent's face. Don't let them see what you're trying to do. And quick little attacks like that work wonders because, again, it's hard for them to gauge. And just because, well, from the virtue of a movement of just coming straight at you like that is a little bit harder to parry. And if they do parry, especially if they do a big wide swinging motion to parry against that, it takes them longer to get back to that ready position than you just stab and stab again. Another nice thing with this particular stance that I like to do is just to do, it's not a thrusting motion, it's actually a chopping motion where you just, with your offhand, just pivot the weapon like this. So it's just a quick little pivot motion like that, and that is a wonderful, if they're not ready for it, maneuver. Now, some of these other, like HEMA type battle stances, like the low guard, or the high guard, or the oh it hurts stance, I don't overly recommend them, mainly because you don't need the power that those stances can generate. And honestly, you're probably better off with the forward stance because that still gives you that passive defensive capability. This stance can generate a lot of power, as well as the overhead stance. But again, unless you're dealing with an opponent that has another very large melee weapon, you probably don't need to generate that kind of power to parry against or to push through their defenses. This is not real sword fighting, so we don't need to go into overcoming parries and stuff like that. Chances are most sword binds, and a sword bind is when the blade hits and they, you know, chances are that's not going to happen that often in Nerf, mainly because the foam makes stuff bounce. When these hit, they bounce. They don't really just stick. They can on occasion, but generally speaking, you're not going to see that. Though if you do get into that particular type of situation, there are a couple of things you can do, but mostly I would say push back, take a step back, and get back into that ready position and start again. Okay, dual wielding. And Nerf, I have seen this a few times. I've done it a few times where you have a melee weapon in each hand. I don't overly recommend this, mainly because you're losing the that passive defensive capability that a shield will give you, in favor of attacking from a different angle. But honestly, if you use your offhanded melee weapon as a purely defensive device, then it can still work. Again, what I would do is keep your your non-dominant hand, in my case left-handed, pointed toward your opponent, and keeping the right hand free, but generally speaking doing the same type of thing. So this way the left hand gives you that range where you want it to be at. Because if your opponent gets closer than this, then you can hit here. But if they're further than that, all you have to do is take a step and attack with your primary weapon. Or ideally a thrust from your primary weapon, especially if your primary weapon is slightly larger than your offhand. Because this way, let's see if you can see that, they're relatively at the same distance. So wherever the orange one can hit, the silver one will also hit. I did make these on purpose that length because that works for me. Now another tactic is to continuously feint, throw fake attacks with one particular weapon while trying to actually hit with the other one. What I like to do here is throw with your primary by keeping your secondary doing the whole point toward the face thing, or just in front of you. Fake attack with the right hand, but in all actuality, you're going to strike with the left. This is mainly because most people can't concentrate on two different things at the same time. Regardless of what people say they can, most people can't. Now, as I've shown off here, this jolt that's on here, that's also a nice little distraction tactic to do. Even if you don't hit with it, if you can shoot somebody and they like follow the dart or like react to it, you can then do a melee hit, which is kind of advantageous, even if it is a little conniving, but all's fair in love and war. Also, another thing you can do is if you have your shield equipped with, shotguns, this works wonders when someone doesn't expect that you can actually shoot at your opponent, especially in semi-auto shotgun style capabilities like this. So to recap, keep this defensive position, keep the tip pointed at your opponent's face, and pretty much you'll, at the very least, prolong the fight so that all the people who are watching it will have a good show. Anyway, over here is a video YouTube thinks you should watch. Why? I don't know. They just think you should watch it. And over here is a video that I'll add in post. I'm Ray with 28 Left Productions, and I'll see y'all later.